Hi, everybody. I'm Scott.
And I'm Luke.
And I'm Jonathan.
And this is the No Way to Hollywood podcast.
Thanks for being here.
He's the most original man who has ever lived.
Yes.
And in light of that, we're going to do something new tonight, guys.
What?
But it might feel just as boring as the AFI Top 100. Let's find out if it is. I think it's going to be awesome.
I think it's going to be awesome.
You decide.
Luke doesn't think.
You don't know what you don't want to know what I think.
It's too depressing.
One of the ideas we had always kicked around is
Since we were
basically...
Oh,
might
wait.
still be children, so let's go with that.
I mean, pretty childish right now.
Hey, it's podcast time. Time to be a kid.
So we are going back to the year 2010. We were looking at
When we were kids.
looking at. You weren't a kid then, and neither was I.
I'm just kidding.
We're going back to the year 2010, and we are giving out awards just to show Hollywood that they don't know anything.
No Way to Hollywood award.
This award is more important than anything else ever.
Do you get a tisk tisk or a snap snap? Huh? What do you get?
Jonathan, can you just give us a quick rundown of our 5 categories we are giving out awards in?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have 5 categories that we will be going through for the year 2010. The 5 categories are going to be Best Picture, Most Rewatchable, Best Sequence, See It Once, and Guilty Pleasure. To make sure it's clearly defined, Best Picture is supposed to be our example of Best Picture is if you had Schindler's List and Jurassic Park going against each other, both Spielberg movies, both really great movies, would you really say Jurassic Park is the best movie, or is Schindler's List the best movie? But if you got to Most Rewatchable, that might flip. You might say Jurassic Park is the most rewatchable, and Schindler's List is not very rewatchable at all because it's very hard. So that's why we have a Best Picture and a Most Rewatchable, though lots of years we may see that Most Rewatchable and Best Picture may have a lot of crossover, okay?
Well, there's also like See It Once, right? Where like, Schindler's List is a movie that maybe you never want to watch again, but you need to see it because of its
Cultural
impact.
relevance
Yeah.
and filmmaking relevance.
Or
and-
another way of looking at it is like, does this belong on an AFI list?
What are those other couple of categories there?
Best Sequence is specifically not able to be pulled from our nominees for the Most Rewatchable or Best Picture list. They can't be those because we know those have lovable sequences. This is supposed to be a category that includes a movie that may have nothing else but a good sequence. So the best sequence goes to this sequence in X movie. There you go.
And Luke, can you help us define guilty pleasure?
Guilty Pleasure is a movie that you might not even want to admit that you watch, but like is totally a blast for you.
Indeed.
So like Babes in Toyland, maybe.
And there's different severities of shame on the guilty pleasure.
Yes,
There's
but-
like, I'm fine telling you about it. And there's like, seriously, I like this movie, but I shouldn't tell you.
And that's why I should try and hide my movie collection at home. But anyways,
My personal hope with this is that we can collectively work through this. We've taken there are 7,000 titles or so from the IMDb list of movies that came out in 2010. We will not be going through 7,000 different titles to talk about. We've limited down to a master list for us of movies that we have both seen and care to talk about concerning these lists that might even possibly be nominees. I am hopeful that we can spend some time going through the categories and the movies on our master list, come up with our general nominees for each category, and then maybe have consensus. And if we can't get there, just do our personal pick of our favorites each category, call it good. That's my intention.
okay,
How does everybody feel about that?
Luke is good with it. Let's get to the list before we run out of time.
All right. The list of movies that came out in
Are we
2010.
going up or down the list, by the way?
This is where I'm starting, and I'm going down the list to where it ends.
Oh, okay. So we have more to talk about up front. Okay, let's do it.
Or just to give you all the movies on this list from 2010 that we have any care about and have seen. All right. Inception came out in 2010. Scott versus the World. The Social Network. Harry Potter. The Deathly Hallows Part 1. Black Swan. The Town. Kick-Ass. Tron Legacy. Tangled. The Expendables. The Other Guys, Blue Valentine, Red, How to Train Your Dragon, Toy Story 3, The Book of Eli, Salt, Insidious, The A-Team, 127 Hours, Date Night, Let Me In, Night and Day, Megamind, and finally, Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
So that's our list. Do you want to go through it and then say put it in one of the categories or not? Pitch it.
I think we just choose a category and go through the list and decide that way. I think that's
Okay.
easier, right?
Okay.
Okay. Do we want to start with something easier like Guilty Pleasure, or do we want to go straight for Best Picture here?
Let's save Best Picture for last. Let's go from bottom up.
Okay, Guilty Pleasure.
Guilty Pleasure. Okay. On this list, there's certainly a number of movies that I could put into the Guilty Pleasure. My top nomination is going to be Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
I really like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, and it wouldn't even be in my Guilty Pleasure list because I like it. My Guilty Pleasure list may include something like The A-Team or potentially even Night and Day. Might be on my Guilty Pleasures list. A-Team, Night and Day.
I mean, my other one would be Date Night, but that was a fun kind of rom-com movie.
And just so you know, Tucker and Dale versus Evil is about a couple of hicks who are stereotyped into being serial killers in a horror movie, and in fact, they end up being the heroes.
I'm pretty sure I've
of a reverse horror
recommended this
movie.
movie before.
It's fantastic.
Delightful.
Night and Day, it's spelled night as in a chivalrous knight.
K-N-I-G-H-T.
It's like a sword-wielding knight. It has Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz. Tom Cruise is a super spy. Cameron Diaz is a nobody, and they fall in love, and it's kind of funny and quirky. Okay, so it's like a romantic comedy action film. That's why it's something. So those, and then was the A-Team. Maybe you remember when Liam Neeson was part of the A-Team in this movie, and Bradley Cooper was also part of the A-Team in this movie. Charlotte Copley was also part of the A-Team in that movie, and I find it really enjoyable. It's a lot of fun, but it's not necessarily the greatest or most grounded movie. Anyway, Luke, do you have any other things you'd like to add to the Guilty Pleasures list?
I mean, maybe Megamind, but even that I don't think I've seen very often. So no.
Okay. So the Guilty Pleasures right now stand at nominees Night and Day, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, The A-Team. Wow.
This is a bad year for guilty pleasures.
I'm not that guilty about any of these. So I'm trying to think of which one is the most guilty for me.
Well, see, here's my reasoning, particularly behind Tucker and Dale versus Evil, is because part of the reason, I mean, it's a horror movie, guys. It's a horror movie. I don't like horror movies.
It's an action comedy.
But it's really an action comedy.
With like gallons of fake blood.
Fake blood.
Gallons of fake blood.
Lots of fake blood.
There's some gore. It's an action comedy.
It's an action comedy.
She just
with, like,
ran headfirst into the wood chipper.
We got these kids killing themselves on my property.
got a suicide pact.
My one issue with Tucker and Dale versus Evil is that I don't find it personally to be a guilty pleasure. I am happy and proud to tell everyone I like Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I will tell people that I love it, but because of the horror elements to it is why I put it in the guilty pleasure list versus somewhere else.
Luke, Night and Day, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, and the A-Team. Which one do you have the most guilt about? Which one do you have the most pleasure with? Did you like any of these films?
I think I enjoyed the A-Team when I saw it, but I only saw it once, and I don't remember. And as you know, I get it confused with like everything that happens in Fast and Furious. So it's hard for me to keep things straight in my head with all that. And then I did not understand what I was watching when I watched Night and Day, and I did not enjoy it. I did not have fun. I was like, I don't know what's going on.
I'm going to vote for the A-Team as the guilty pleasure winner. That's what I would go with for 2010.
I don't know if I can break that tie for you guys.
You're just gonna vote for Tucker and Dale.
I'm totally voting for Tucker.
Well,
and Dale.
okay,
It's
and,
evil.
and I can see why he might want Tucker and Dale, because then it's on the list, even though because it's not going to go in like any of the other ones, right?
I might have watched this more than a lot of these movies.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. Well, okay, let's copy and paste that up into that, and then those two, Tucker and Dale, and
we have a
Go on the
tie.
list.
We have our first tie.
it's like data points going in. Can it move it?
You can copy and paste, but it's not fast.
Wow. Okay. There's a way to do this.
Okay, you know what I'm gonna do?
You're just gonna retype it.
Yeah, I am.
Smart.
Wow. All right, I'm just gonna put in 18.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there we
And I'll
go.
put Luke's just gonna be the 18.
Luke's vote is not the A team. Luke did not break the tie.
Anyway, all right.
What's our
all
next
right.
category?
Next category is see it once. Remind you that these are supposed to be movies that you need to see once and you can then leave for pop culture or art culture film relevance. Not necessarily because they are the best movies or the favorite movies, most enjoyable movies, but rather something you need to have seen from the year. So again, trying to avoid crossover for what will likely be on a rewatchable list or on the best picture list. More of a, you just got to see this once, and then you're good.
So right now I'm kind of feeling maybe Book of Eli or where is that one? Or Black Swan.
Ooh. I have not seen either of those, but I think based on my knowledge of those films, I think I like both of those nominations.
Yeah.
I want to see Book of Eli more, and I am hopeful that I will want to see Book of Eli more than once is the issue.
For me, I think Book of Eli would go into a different category. I like it enough that it would. I totally agree with Black Swan is where I would go for a you got to see it once.
Then let's make it Black Swan.
Dude, done. Black Swan.
Black Swan, you got to see it once, then you don't got to see it no more. That's the
Please.
beauty of that category.
Yeah.
And for some of you, you don't got to even see that once. But if you want to know Darren Aronofsky and some crazy and some different references, it's a nutso movie. All right. So,
Next category.
best sequence.
Okay, I'm nominating the hallway sequence in Kick-Ass because the rest of the movie is crap, but that sequence is a blast.
I mean, there's a lot of action sequences in these movies that I think we could nominate a lot of these movies for. I mean, the A-Team probably has one.
See, but when you say probably has one, like, does it have one or not?
Best sequence. I might recommend the Expendables and that sequence where it's Stone Cold Austin fighting Sylvester Stallone, and then they get stopped in the fight for a second because Terry Crews is walking down the hallway with an automatic shotgun and people are just being shredded apart, and it's hilarious. And they're like, we should leave.
I do not remember this.
Okay,
but, that's because that movie didn't work.
Or the section when Terry Crews like pops around corners and shoots one bullet at an entire guardhouse and it explodes. Basically, the last action sequence of the movie, the last set piece, is pretty fun.
We were talking about one before we started the episode for, was it The Other Guys? Is that?
The Other Guys is another nominee we could do. The Other Guys is the Mark Wahlberg, Will Ferrell comedy where they are a couple of cops, and the two cool cops are Samuel L. Jackson and Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Samuel L. Jackson, spoilers for The Other Guys. My favorite sequence of the movie is they are chasing some thieves. The thieves go up to the top of a building, shoot zip lines to another building, ride those zip lines to get away from the cops, Samuel L. Jackson, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and then cut the zip lines so they cannot be followed. Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Samuel L. Jackson are so arrogant and full of themselves, they look at each other and say, you thinking what I'm thinking? And they fist pound and say, aim for the bushes. And they jump to get to the other building. We follow them in slow motion as they fall to their deaths. That was a pretty good comedy beat that I really laughed at in that movie. So that's a sequence that could be up for mention.
Yep.
So we got Expendables, the last action sequence. We got The Other Guys, the stupid jump to your death sequence.
And Kick-Ass the hallway.
And Kick-Ass the hallway. which is just the girl just kills everybody, right?
Yeah, the girl just goes down the hallway and mows through everybody.
A couple of action sequences and a jump to your death sequence. So dying is an important part of the.
If you want to get nominated for great
for
scene.
best sequence, there better be some people dying.
No, that's not true because other years there are other sequences. But yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember the sequence in Red when they're in the house, right?
Red's too good. Red's got too many good things going for it.
Okay, so that's going to be in a different category, is what you're telling me.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Blue Valentine for that one sequence where you're sad.
You mean the second half of the film?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
All right, so we're going between best sequence, Expendables, last action sequence, Kick-Ass, the hallway sequence with the little girl killing everybody, and the other guys, Samuel L. Jackson, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, jump off a building and die.
I guess we like comedy moments this year. I don't know.
So
Good action
which
moments.
of those three would you guys? I mean, we all nominated.
Luke, I feel like you've got a strong preference here.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do not remember the other two scenes that you've mentioned. And maybe because I never saw the other guys, I'm not sure now, because it truly no memory of that, which that feels like something I would remember. And Expendables, the whole thing was just kind of absurd, the whole way, and so doing some absurd stuff in one sequence or another just didn't really work for me. Whereas Kick-Ass was such a disappointing film for all of it, but that one scene, I was like, that was fun. I'd watch that again. I would have skipped the entire movie and just watched that scene. That is the scene that is okay, I'm glad you made that scene, and I wish you didn't do anything else.
That's a good point.
All right. Besides Expendables, it's the other guys.
The other guys.
Yeah, I don't need to. I mean, there could be some funny stuff in the other guys. There's some moments, but I don't need to watch the movie again. I don't even need to watch that sequence again, though. For me, it's the least. I don't think the other guys is going to take it.
No.
To me, it's Kick-Ass and the Expendables, and I don't remember the hallway fight very much. I really don't. I watched the movie and thought that Kick-Ass was boring ass. I don't even remember the fight very much, so it's not standing out. That's why Expendables is. But the thing is, I could maybe go with you on Kick-Ass just because Expendables, I could maybe watch the whole movie again. Although I would be highly likely to just skip to a sequence like the end and watch that and be completely happy with my time. Save me a good hour and just watch the end of the movie, you know?
Yeah. Well, having not seen any of the nominations we've come up with, I am actually going to agree with Luke on this one and give it to Kick-Ass.
All right, I still vote for the Expendables. But it's
Kick-Ass wins. Luke, that's amazing.
Go me, scoring sports points in giving away awards.
We don't say sports here. No sports talk here. Unless it's a sports movie night or something. Gosh, bringing up
Sports
the
movies.
S word. Come on.
Okay, what's our next category?
Our next category is an important one. Most rewatchable. Not necessarily
Well-
the best movie, but certainly the most rewatchable, enjoyable movie.
So here are the movies that I know that I've watched more than once. It's How to Train Your Dragon, Red, Inception, but I don't think Inception's going in this category.
I mean, again, the same thing about Inception is every 2 years you watch it. Every 2-3 years you watch it. At least that's been my experience. Scott Pilgrim versus the World
Yeah, I mean,
is a huge contender for me.
Yeah.
That movie cracks me up every time. I find the movie greatly enjoyable. I've watched it many times. I still enjoy it.
I'd second that.
I've watched it once. I enjoyed it.
Would you watch it again?
Probably. I think
So-
I'd like to
no, just
watch it
kidding.
with you guys. Oh, I mean, yeah, I could talk about Salt, but that's not a great movie. I've watched it more than once, but
I've watched Tron Legacy definitely a few times. I enjoyed Tron Legacy.
I watched it once.
see, that's another movie I watched it once, and I watched it. I had the desire to go back and watch the original, and once I did that, I lost all hope in ever watching Tron again.
Yeah, so I mean, How to Train Your Dragon is great, but I don't know.
I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I think I've watched that movie once. I don't need to see it again.
Right.
I
I like the
I
music.
almost nominated for best sequence because even though the movie's better than that,
Right.
I care about like the flight sequence and like the end dragon fight, and I don't need to see anything else in the movie again.
Right.
Sorry,
and it's
niece.
mostly the
My
flight
niece
sequence.
loves those stuff. She's gonna be all like, "You don't like that train dragon?" It's gonna be sad. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like Tucker and Dale is actually kind of rewatchable, kind of. But
Toy Story 3,
no.
again, really good. I don't want to watch it again
Yeah,
all that much.
So yeah, Scott Pilgrim versus
Scott Pilgrim, Inception. I like Book of Eli, but you guys are saying you haven't watched them again.
Yep.
Tucker and Dale, I've watched a bunch, but we already did that in Guilty Pleasures. We could do it again. Social Network, I've seen a few times, but I don't really want to watch it a bunch.
Right. So yeah, I'm saying Scott.
Scott Pilgrim is where I would go.
I mean, I think I agree with you guys.
Okay.
Sweet.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World, most rewatchable
Go us.
2010.
Congratulations, Scott Pilgrim.
I know you were waiting for that one 11 years later. All right, now we're up to the best picture of 2010. Not necessarily the most rewatchable, but the best picture of 2010.
Luke, you hate yourself. I
think he
to
just
me-
hates this entire thing.
For me, this is. I mean, this is pretty easy for me to go with Inception. There's so much interesting stuff they did. I mean, Luke, I'm sure the behind the scenes you would just get a stitch out of because of all they did. I saw an article recently on how they did the 0G fight sequence. I mean, they did a lot of interesting stuff.
It's not 0G. It's a turning hallway in.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a moment
Where there's 0G.
It's only like one moment
As it turns.
when they jump.
Yeah.
When they jump each other, because it doesn't matter.
It's pretty legit.
It's not 0G. It's van in air.
I mean, beyond that, I think Inception has. I mean, it's a great. I think it's a really creative story, and they do a good job with it. I like the fact that they don't tell you everything, especially at the ending. Spoiler
Yeah,
alert.
I'll go with you.
I mean, okay, I like Inception a lot. It's hard for me. I mean, Scott Pilgrim versus the World for me. I know it won most rewatchable, but there's a reason for that. It's incredibly clever. It's really, really, really well done on all levels. There's not a moment in that movie that really like. That movie continues to. There might be a false note here or there, but it's very rare. Inception is really good. It's really good. It's 2 hours of exposition, and then your emotional climax because they actually have one in this movie, which is a huge deal for Nolan. So it's one of Nolan's best. And then you've got. We're not even talking about Social Network. We're not even talking
Which
about.
was actually nominated for Best Picture.
And we didn't even bring up Red and most rewatchable, by the way.
That is also true.
Toy Story 3 we haven't talked about.
I mean, The King's Speech won the Best Picture in the Academy Awards.
It's not on our list because no one cares about the King's Speech in this group.
It was a fun watch when I watched it the one time.
And that's all it is. I don't think it makes rewatchable or Best Picture. Anyway,
Let me see what else we're supposed to pull up here. Black Swan was nominated, but we already had that as the
just to be
one.
clear, these are the Oscar nominations.
Yes, the Fighter, Inception, The Kids Are All Right, 127 hours. Social Network, Toy Story 3, True Grit, that is the remake version, and Winter's Bone.
See, here's the thing. Like, Social Network is Aaron Sorkin, really well written. I think we've talked about it before. Like, there's some really good stuff they're doing with it. But like, as far as like a great movie, like,
You know what? Should we switch out Black Swan for Social Network for the movie you should see once?
Except I don't even want to see it once.
Well, you just not wanting to watch a movie doesn't necessarily mean it's not a movie worth watching, though. I mean, you haven't even given it a shot yet.
I mean, okay. I think Social Network is a better film than Black Swan.
I agree.
I don't
Do we
know.
put it on the we must watch once? Make him have to go see.
I mean, yeah, because like, Social Network is more of. It's more about what's going on at that, in our lives at that time, right? Like, it's more about that. So it might make more sense than Black Swan, which is more of a, do you want to know what the crap Darren Aronofsky was up to?
Black Swan's really the most artsy, crazy film you need to know about and Social Network is the more culturally relevant film of that year. Is my argument. We didn't even talk about this. So now, I'm starting to lean that way. Now I know you apparently have super hatred for this film that you haven't seen because it's the social network, because it's Facebook.
It's social networking.
Well, it's not social. You might actually really enjoy it. You might find it very fascinating. It's not about.
Okay.
You should give it a shot.
As long as you watch it and then everyone that watches it gets off of Facebook, I will watch it.
You don't have to have Facebook to watch the social network, at least right now in this particular point in time, 2021. Give it some years. I don't know what may happen.
That's an interesting question. It might make sense to switch it. I don't know.
I think my vote would be to switch Black Swan for Social Network for the movie you should probably see once. If you're only going to see one of these movies just once, that would be it. Don't put it on the Best Picture list.
They can both vote for that, not vote me, but I will stick with Black Swan for that.
Well, okay, and again, I think that it's a better movie, so I don't want to put it on a, you just need to...
Yeah, but I don't know if the category is about purely like you should like. I think there's going to be movies you're going to put on there that people are going to want to watch more than once. It's just that you don't have to. Like it's just you kind of need to like people should probably check this one out just so they know what it is. It's not always watch it once and drop it and leave it and let it die. And it's not necessarily going to we could put Napoleon Dynamite on the once list.
Oh, dear Lord.
There are some people who love that movie and they would be happy to watch it again. I'm not one of them.
I'm not one of them.
But there's some people who would do that.
Right, but from a filmmaking like Social Network, while it has some really good writing and therefore it does some very interesting things from a pacing line, and we can talk about that in the video essay below, like there is some really good craft to it.
Right.
There isn't anything groundbreaking from a filmmaking perspective.
But is there any of the nominees on the list? Like,
I don't know.
if we're going to start making that the reason.
Yeah.
Because Black Swan's just a trip.
Yeah.
Black Swan's a trip, and you get a pretty crazy emotional payoff. Like, it's kind of crazy at the end, but the whole journey itself is bizarre. Aronofsky and
Whiplash does it better.
Whiplash is good, but that's not this year.
No, that's not what we're talking about.
127 Hours isn't important enough to put on that list.
No,
on
it's
any of these
not.
lists, actually, for us at least.
What that movie was for me.
127 hours?
I was like 127. I was like, okay, 127 hours. And then it's like 36 hours in, and I was like, oh, crap, this movie's going to be so long. I was like, 127?
Reminder, that's the one about 24. A climber.
Oh, no!
Danny Boyle's movie about a climber who gets caught, the real life story of the climber who gets caught on the boulder in the canyon and has to survive for 127.
Cuts off his arm, right?
Cuts off his arm, and spoilers for real life.
Yeah. By the way, it happened.
Okay, so I'm pushing for Social Network to go into the place of See It Once. That's what I'm pushing for. But he doesn't want to do that, and you're not sure because
I'm not sure.
You really don't like going. Anyway, back to Best Picture. Back to Best Picture.
You can throw it on there as a tie. We tied once already.
We're just going.
Best Picture. We've had a strong argument from Scott for Inception. Social Network could be a contender potentially. Red. Like Toy Story 3. We haven't talked about. Red's not a Best Picture, but like.
And Toy Story 3 is not a Best Picture.
Red's a total rewatchable. I don't know if I think it's the best movie. Like I would give it to Scott Pilgrim in a heartbeat over Red.
Red is also one of those that has a lot of those moments where once you've seen it, it doesn't really the secret, right?
Yeah, it's not.
So that's why Rewatchable.
It's still fun.
That's why Rewatchable is very much like a Scott Pilgrim movie.
Yeah. I think that this category is going to end up being, from what I can tell from these nominees' potentials, I think we're dealing with Inception, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Social Network. I think it's our top three right there that we're dealing with as far as movies that could be a Best Picture nom. You got any other things that you think would go in there?
No,
you?
Not at all.
Those are it.
Not from our list, no.
Okay. All right, so those are the three choices. And so the question is, do we give it to Inception or something else? That's the first question, because there's a strong argument over here.
I give it to Inception. I feel like I could make the argument for 5 votes for Inception right now.
For 5 votes?
Yep.
from 3 of us. That's pretty impressive. Scott.
Exactly.
That's my argument. Scott's delusional. Can't do math. Don't go with him on that. Let's do a real vote.
Okay. Scott Pilgrim is a ton of fun, which is
Yes.
why it's on Rewatchable.
Yes.
But
But the reason it's so much fun is because of the filmmaking, right? Like
yes, that's true.
that's my hard part with that. It's like the reason I keep wanting to go back is not just because it's funny and clever, which it is, but it's done so well. Granted, Inception is done very well.
It's just a lot of
Is it the best movie of 2010? Is it? That's the question. And do we need to define our parameters a little bit better? Like, what do we think best movie of a year
right,
means?
and this is
And
where
it's
I
my opinion, right?
Well, yeah, it's subjective, but we're trying to come to some consensus, at least to know what our definition of the whole thing is,
well,
right?
and that's where I thought that the idea was that Best Picture is different from.
It can be, but
Yeah,
it doesn't
can't-
have to
doesn't-
be.
Oh, okay, it doesn't have to be
I don't think it has to be.
because if it's just a movie that I want to watch more, like I don't know, but like you're right, there's a lot of craft in Scott Pilgrim,
And there's a lot of craft in Inception as well.
right?
And there's a lot of craft in Social Network as well. But I can let Social Network be a half-hearted nominee that Scott doesn't want to be there. I think it's between Inception and Scott Pilgrim for best movie of the year.
So again, because I look at it,
I'm
as
not backing a horse yet, by the way. I think those are the two
right,
movies.
yeah. The way I look at it is of the two, like which would show up on an AFI list. Inception shows up on an AFI list, and Scott Pilgrim does not. But Scott Pilgrim is in more people's queues to watch. So that's why I think that they belong in those two different categories.
Wow, Luke just dropped the mic.
I'm sorry, everyone, that you heard whatever.
I think I turned it off, but hopefully that turning off wasn't too loud. Is Jonathan going to go with us on this, or is he going to fight back?
I think he wants to fight back.
So you guys, you know, like Blue Valentine.
It's not a best picture. There's no way it's getting a best picture from us. See, and that's where I've always had a hard time with like the Oscar nominees, and saying best picture. I don't know if we want to follow the same trend. I think there's a valid argument for Schindler's List versus Jurassic Park. Like, I understand that kind of an argument. I'm just trying to, like, do you really think Inception versus Scott Pilgrim is the same thing as Schindler's List and Jurassic Park and the same, like, ideas? Because
Possibly.
what is the best movie? I mean, Toy Story 3 is fantastic, right? That could get a nom in this category, but I don't want to watch, I don't want to watch it again. And so there's something of going back and doing it from, 10, 11 years ago gives us an opportunity to think about longevity of a film, not just how it felt that one year, that one time, and not to think about it from a purely artistic perspective alone.
But Inception brings things that I think impact film making, that impact kind of the social consciousness in a way that makes it one of those touchstone films. Whereas Scott Pilgrim, it is good craft. It is, all these things. It's a lot of fun. It's really creative. It's got great visuals. It does lots of good jokes. It's really well written. La 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 la. But it's just a really well made comic book movie kind of thing, right? Like they did a really good job with it. It didn't break new ground in any kind of way, I don't think. But it did it what it did really well. Like it's watchable. Like it's so much fun.
Yeah, and I think with Inception you get something that not only is really well made, but also like pushes the bounds of film.
The bounds of film. We're gonna start
Where you
using
can
that kind of language.
start having gravity. Like what if you folded a city?
Yeah.
I
Understandably, I am also the philosopher in the group, most likely. I mean, I did study it in college.
He's literally a major in philosophy.
So
he's a major philosopher.
I'm a major philosopher.
I am the very model of a modern major philosopher.
Oh my goodness. But
Aristotle
there
and
is
Plato.
when they're talking about exposition in a movie, yes, there is a lot of it in Inception, but for me, it's that exploration in the mind of like, wow, let me think about this. Let me consider this. Let me ponder this.
Okay.
It is possibly life-changing. Scott Pilgrim is just crazy fun.
Here's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say two things, and we'll be done. I think. One, I do recall Scott Pilgrim, and I don't know what all was happening at the time in all of the other mediums, including TV. But I don't remember. I felt personally when I watched it for the first time, I didn't see a lot of using text the way that they did and using graphics. Like they didn't use visual effects in the way I had ever seen before. They hadn't used they just used it to give you internal headspace. And I understand that comes from the comic book or whatnot, but it was a first time I saw in a film or in TV where whether it's texting somebody or whether it was someone's headspace or like little jokes that were just, or even when they would have a narrator come in or not. Like there were so many little things going on that were so clever and really informative to a character's headspace or into a joke or a background idea, and communicating things to you so quickly that it felt really modern because it was a lot of information on the screen at one time coming into your head as a viewer that someone who is, I think, younger gets better. And it felt very modern, very good. It's an Edgar Wright film. I think it actually is somewhat pushing the bounds of film. I think the difference is I don't think a lot of people went and saw Scott Pilgrim. It didn't become a part of the cultural consciousness. Inception, a bunch of people went and saw, and it became part of the cultural consciousness. And so I totally see the argument for Inception on a cultural conscious level, but on the filmmaking level, I just want to make sure it's understood. I think Scott Pilgrim is more than just a well-crafted film. I think it does, in its own way, push some of the bounds and do some groundbreaking stuff. That being said, I'm willing to submit to Inception being the best movie of 2010, and the only reason I'm willing to do that, really, I think, out of all the different movies possible, is because Inception ultimately has the greatest catharsis. I don't think any of their films that we've talked about that could be a nominee for this list have the same level of filmmaking quality and have a story that actually has some sort of real catharsis that's good and powerful and really gets you and does all of those things well. And that is why there is filmmaking breakthrough. I don't want to discount that, but I don't think that's enough to push it into the best movie, best picture. I think it has to be that plus. And since it actually has a true emotional catharsis and the story is actually understandable and it's actually a story and you actually hope and fear for things and it's a Nolan film, that's a miracle. So I will give it to him on that one. I don't think I'll ever give Nolan a best picture for the next 10 years in this list until he makes a movie that's somewhere close to that again, but I will submit.
Oh, I mean, unless we're going back to whenever he made Memento, I don't think there's a reason to put any of his other films in
Yeah, and I'm
best
sure,
category.
I'd be very curious to know what else came out that year. If anything like The Matrix showed up, I'm going to kick its ass with The Matrix.
Which
But
is
Well, there you go,
perfectly legit.
viewers. You now have our categories that we
For
created
2010, which was 11 years
with
ago.
movies in it and stuff. So why don't you argue with us and tell us what terrible decision makers we are?
what film
Can
did we
we
miss?
run through
What film
our
did we snub?
winners again?
All right, let me look at this list here that I never filled out. All right, Best Picture goes to Inception.
Inception,
Most Rewatchable goes to Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
which I'm very glad about.
The Best Sequence goes to Kick-Ass and the hallway sequence with the girl killing everyone. See It Once goes to The Social Network, a last-minute change, and Scott would like to make sure that everyone understands that he thinks Black Swan should be in that because he thinks The Social Network is actually social networking, which it's not about that at all, even though it's about the creation of Facebook. A guilty pleasure list. It was a bit of a tie. He was pushing hard for Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I was pushing hard for A-Team. And Luke was like, I'm not getting involved. Not really, because he doesn't have enough of a stake in it. So you decide on the guilty pleasure. What's your guilty pleasure of 2010? Those are the films. I would like to give a quick honorable mention to Book of Eli. I really like Book of Eli. It's a really good film. I don't think it fits into any of the categories or is a strong enough contender to beat in any of the categories. It doesn't race the top that way, but it's a really good film, and I would
So
kind
of
of
all
come back
of
to
our non-winners, I mean, I'm glad you're recommending Book of Eli. Of all of our non-winners, I'm going to say go watch Red,
Sure.
because Red
Yeah.
is just a fun movie. Luke,
Yeah,
do you
it
have
is
one of
good.
those from the list that did not win anything that you would recommend?
Probably, probably go see How to Train Your Dragon if for some inexplicable reason you haven't seen it yet, and then just listen to the soundtrack after that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you again next time.